So, buzz across every corner of the internet last night was that Claressa Shields lost her composure in a Facebook comments section, and honestly, this one wasn't even close. Claressa Shields didn't just get dragged. Claressa Shields walked into the fire, poured gasoline on herself, and then argued with the flames for hours. And listen, the moment she reposted that message about women messaging her man, the entire timeline understood exactly what was coming, because we've watched this movie before. Claressa Shields reacts first and thinks later. That's the pattern. That's the whole thing. And this time, the pattern may have finally shown the world something Claressa Shields has been working overtime to hide. Here's what makes this different. This wasn't a stray comment. This wasn't a one-off. Claressa Shields is deep in training camp for her next fight, which means, by her own admission, she's living under a 6-week no-intimacy rule, she's away from Papoose more often than not, and she has no real way of knowing what Papoose is doing, who's sliding into what inbox, or what conversations are happening while she's grinding in the gym. And that's the exact context you need to understand what happened on that comment section last night. Because when Claressa Shields decided to repost a message basically shaming women for messaging Papoose, and then added her own caption calling it diabolical and disgusting, she didn't just stir the pot. She practically confirmed the one thing critics have been saying about her for over a year. Now, before we get to the receipts, let me set the scene properly, because this matters. The reason people pushed back so hard is that the accusation embedded in Claressa Shields' own caption raises a much bigger question than she seems to realize. Claressa Shields said women are constantly messaging Papoose. Okay, but how does she know that? Is Papoose sitting her down after every training session and reading her every DM he's received? That would be a strange use of anyone's time. Or does Claressa Shields have direct access to Papoose's social media accounts and inboxes herself? Because a lot of people online have already accused her of replying from Papoose's page in the past, replies phrased in a way that sounded far more like Claressa Shields than Papoose. And if that's true, then the picture becomes very different. Then Claressa Shields isn't just offending her man. Claressa Shields is monitoring him. And when a fighter who's supposed to be locked into training camp is instead scrolling through her partner's inbox at midnight, that tells you everything you need to know about where her real focus is. And here's where it gets even more layered. Claressa Shields is condemning women for reaching out to Papoose. But wasn't that reportedly how their entire relationship started? Papoose has said before, in his own words, that Claressa Shields reached out to him first. Claressa Shields has essentially confirmed it herself in interviews, she invited Papoose to a fight, she pursued the connection, she initiated. So for Claressa Shields to now stand on Facebook, calling that exact behavior diabolical and disgusting, is the kind of contradiction the internet doesn't forget. Real talk, if that behavior was worthy of condemnation, then it was worthy of condemnation the first time it happened, too. And that's why the comments section under her post turned into an execution. Now let's actually look at what people said, because this is where Claressa Shields completely lost the plot. One commenter, someone who genuinely appeared to be a supporter, wrote something along the lines of, "Claressa, I defend you when you're right, but you probably should have skipped this one, the comments are about to go nuclear." That was a warning. A soft one. A gentle one. Somebody who liked her, trying to save her from herself. And how did Claressa Shields respond? Claressa Shields fired back with, "I'll blaze you down to the ground. Go away, lunch lady." Let that sentence sit with you for a second. A world champion boxer, a woman who calls herself the GWAT, a woman who has genuinely accomplished things in a sport nobody else has, is threatening to blaze a stranger down to the ground in a Facebook comments section over a message about her boyfriend. That's not confidence. That's not unbothered. That's not, "I'm above this." That's someone whose emotional dial is stuck on maximum and whose finger won't leave the reply button. And it only got worse from there. Another person dropped the line, "Ain't no fun when the rabbit got the gun." Anyone who has ever spent 5 minutes online knows exactly what that phrase means. It means the tables have turned. It means someone is finally getting the same treatment they used to dish out. But Claressa Shields, either playing dumb or genuinely spiraling, replied, "Maybe I should have spelled it out. What gun are you talking about? Y'all are losers." Now here's the thing. Everyone understood the comment. Claressa Shields understood the comment. Pretending not to understand is a rhetorical dodge, and it's the kind of dodge people use when the point hits a little too close. That entire exchange only convinced more people that Claressa Shields is being eaten alive by this situation, no matter how many times she types the word losers. Then somebody wrote a devastating 3-word comment, "Fair game, babes." That's it. That's the whole message. And Claressa Shields, a professional boxer who trains her entire life around discipline and composure, replied instantly with, "Y'all are inboxing him begging him to get back with his ex, y'all are losers." And that reply, right there, is the one that gave everything away. Because how does Claressa Shields know what's in Papoose's inbox? How does Claressa Shields know women are begging Papoose to get back with Remy Ma? How would she possess that specific information unless she is either being briefed by Papoose in exhausting detail every single day, which, I'm sorry, is not something a grown man in his 40s is doing, or unless she has direct access to Papoose's accounts and is reading them herself? Listen, I want to be fair to Papoose here. I genuinely do not picture Papoose sitting Claressa Shields down after a workout and giving her a PowerPoint presentation about every DM he received that afternoon. It's much, much more likely that Claressa Shields is the one behind the scenes checking. Which means the fighter who's supposed to be locked into camp, off social media, and focused on the biggest fight of her year, is actually spending her nights monitoring her partner's online activity. And critics are asking the obvious question, why? What is Claressa Shields seeing that keeps her this activated? And this is the part where the whole story cracks open. Because if Claressa Shields felt secure, genuinely, foundationally secure, those messages wouldn't move her. Those messages wouldn't even register. Secure people don't feel a need to defend their relationship in a Facebook comment section against strangers they will never meet. Secure people scroll past. Secure people go back to work. Secure people don't type the word losers 14 times in one thread. So the question isn't whether the messages exist. The question is why the messages hit her this hard. And the answer, from everything we can piece together publicly, is that Claressa Shields simply does not trust the situation she's in. And that's a deeply human thing. But it's also the exact thing she spent months trying to project the opposite of. Now here's a comment I keep coming back to, because it exposes a contradiction Claressa Shields cannot escape. A user wrote, "Karma stings, doesn't it?" And Claressa Shields shot back, "What karma? We pay y'all dust, losers." Look, you cannot claim to be paying someone dust while simultaneously arguing with them in real time. Those two things are physically incompatible. Paying dust means you don't see them. You don't respond. You keep scrolling. That's the entire concept. Meanwhile, Claressa Shields was replying to seemingly every critic in the thread. Laughing emojis. Insults. Repeated use of the word losers. That's not the vocabulary of somebody unbothered. That's the vocabulary of somebody whose nerve has been struck so many times it's exposed. And the harder Claressa Shields tries to convince the internet she doesn't care, the more the receipts prove she cares more than anyone. And this is where the Remy Ma factor enters, which, real talk, is unavoidable in this story. Claressa Shields kept insisting that women are messaging Papoose, begging him to get back with his ex. But has anybody actually seen those messages? Where's the screenshot? Where's the proof? Because from the outside, Remy Ma appears to be doing exactly what a person who's moved on does. Remy Ma is focused on her career. Remy Ma is present for her kids. Remy Ma isn't posting cryptic captions. Remy Ma isn't fighting strangers on Facebook at midnight. Remy Ma has said her piece and stepped back. So the accusation that the entire internet is out here pleading for their reunion feels like a fantasy Claressa Shields needs to be true. Because if it's true, then Claressa Shields is the chosen one. And if it's not, then Claressa Shields is publicly obsessed with a marriage that legally still exists on paper. Because, and this is the part that never goes away, no matter how many Facebook comments Claressa Shields fires off, Papoose is still legally married. That's not a rumor. That's not a theory. That's a documented fact. Papoose has a tattoo dedicated to Remy Ma that has not been removed. And that means every single time Claressa Shields tries to lecture the world about her man and diabolical DMs, she's doing it from a position that legally, technically, and publicly still involves someone else's name. That's an uncomfortable reality. And discomfort tends to produce exactly the kind of behavior we saw last night, reactive, defensive, over-explaining, and emotionally louder than the moment requires. Now let's get to the comment that I personally think landed the hardest. Someone asked her directly, "Didn't you do the exact same thing though?" And Claressa Shields replied, I'm quoting, "Girl, I invited him to my fight and he was single. Y'all need to be quiet." That answer opens up more questions than it closes. First, how did Claressa Shields know Papoose was single at that moment? Because single is a word that requires prior information. You don't know a stranger is single. You only know that if you were paying attention. If you were watching. If you were tracking. Which means Claressa Shields was tracking Papoose's relationship status before she ever slid into his life. Second, if Claressa Shields and Remy Ma were on speaking terms back then, as some reports have suggested, then why wasn't Remy Ma invited to the fight, too? That's the question no interviewer has ever pushed, and it's the question that keeps the timeline suspicious. Third, legally speaking, Papoose was not single. Papoose was married. He is still married. And in every single narrative Claressa Shields tells about their beginning, that fact is quietly deleted. And here's where the whole story stops being about a Facebook argument and starts being about something bigger. Because the pattern Claressa Shields is showing us isn't just insecurity. It's not just jealousy. It's not just a bad night on social media. It's the pattern of somebody who has staked her entire personal identity on a relationship that keeps demanding public defense. And that's the tell. Real, healthy relationships don't require nightly comment section warfare. Real, healthy relationships don't need their existence proven to strangers. Real, healthy relationships don't create a rotating enemies list of lunch ladies and losers. When you have to defend it this loudly, this often, and this violently, the person you're actually trying to convince isn't the internet. It's yourself. Now let's talk about the training camp piece, because this is the part almost nobody is connecting to the meltdown. Claressa Shields is supposedly locked in for a major fight. Camp is supposed to mean discipline. Camp is supposed to mean silence. Camp is supposed to mean tunnel vision. But what Claressa Shields is showing us instead is a nightly routine of training, going home, opening her phone, and pouring energy into arguments with strangers about a man's inbox. That is not a fighter's schedule. That is not a champion's mindset. That is somebody who would rather be living the influencer lifestyle, traveling, posting, glowing up from Aruba, being seen on Papoose's arm, than doing the joyless, isolating work of preparing for a real fight. And I'll say the quiet part out loud. It's starting to look like boxing may not be Claressa Shields' true priority anymore. It's starting to look like boxing has become the thing that pays the bills that fund the life she really wants. And the fights themselves are just the interruption between vacations. That's a heavy claim. I know. But watch the pattern. After the Aruba trip earlier this year, Claressa Shields came back looking radiant, relaxed, and completely unbothered. That was the energy. That was the vibe. That was somebody who had just spent a week doing exactly what her spirit wanted. Now compare that to the current version. Claressa Shields is smiling for training camp cameras, hitting mitts, posting workouts, but the second the phone comes out at night, there's a different Claressa Shields underneath. There's frustration. There's suspicion. There's a woman who cannot let a Facebook comment go. And the disconnect between the two versions is the loudest signal in this entire story. Look, I'm not saying Claressa Shields doesn't love Papoose. Real talk, I think she loves Papoose more than she has ever loved any single thing in her entire life, and that's precisely the problem. Because Papoose is technically still married. Because Papoose has a tattoo Claressa Shields cannot ink over. Because Papoose exists in a public reality that requires Claressa Shields to constantly perform certainty she doesn't actually have. And when you love something you can't fully own, insecurity isn't a bug. Insecurity is the whole operating system. And that's why the comment section keeps winning. Every time somebody drops a two-word remark, Claressa Shields shows up with a paragraph. Every time somebody laughs at her, Claressa Shields threatens to blaze them down. Every time somebody points out a contradiction, Claressa Shields doubles down on the exact contradiction. It's not composure. It's not confidence. It's a woman whose entire nervous system is on notification duty. Here's the piece I want you to sit with, though. Papoose himself has said publicly, on record, that he wrote most of Remy Ma's biggest verses. Take a moment with that claim. Because if it were true, if Papoose was truly the engine behind Remy Ma's career, then how has Remy Ma continued succeeding, touring, releasing music and staying culturally relevant after their separation. Remy Ma didn't collapse. Remy Ma kept climbing. Which means either the claim was overstated to begin with, or Remy Ma's talent has always been the real engine. Either way, the "I made her" narrative doesn't hold up. And I suspect Claressa Shields knows that. And I suspect that quiet knowledge is another piece of the anxiety. Now imagine you're Claressa Shields. You're watching Remy Ma live her life peacefully, keep her career moving, raise her kids, and, critically, never once respond to you publicly. Not once. Remy Ma has essentially treated Claressa Shields like a weather pattern. And silence like that, from somebody the culture still respects, is louder than any diss track. So Claressa Shields fills the silence herself. Claressa Shields writes captions. Claressa Shields reposts other women's tweets. Claressa Shields shouts at strangers. Because the only thing worse than being disrespected is being ignored, and Remy Ma has been ignoring Claressa Shields with surgical precision for years. That, right there, is the emotional engine driving every single thing Claressa Shields typed last night. And here's what most people are missing about this whole situation. The comment section wasn't actually attacking Claressa Shields' boxing. Nobody was questioning her titles. Nobody was disputing her resume in the ring. Everything happening in that thread was about her personal life, her judgment, her insecurities, her contradictions, her choices. Which means the moment Claressa Shields decided to engage with the thread, she was fighting on the one field where she has no real leverage. In the ring, Claressa Shields is elite. In the comments, Claressa Shields is a rookie. And she keeps stepping into rings she should be avoiding. Let me say this plainly. There isn't enough love in the world to justify sacrificing your peace like this. There isn't enough love in the world to justify staying up past midnight arguing with strangers about a man who is legally married to somebody else. There isn't enough love in the world to justify calling supporters, lunch ladies, for gently trying to save you from yourself. That's not love. That's not devotion. That's the sound of a woman being consumed by a situation, and honestly, watching it play out publicly is more sad than entertaining. Because, and this is the piece I want to leave you with, Claressa Shields has spent her entire life being told she wasn't feminine enough, wasn't marketable enough, wasn't soft enough, wasn't chosen. Claressa Shields has fought for every crumb of mainstream respect she's ever received. And now that she finally has a man on her arm who publicly wants her, publicly promotes her, publicly writes bars about her, Claressa Shields is terrified to lose him. Because losing Papoose wouldn't just mean losing a partner. It would feel like losing the entire proof of concept for the life Claressa Shields has been building. That's why the comment section hurts. That's why every DM matters. That's why "losers" gets typed 14 times. Because underneath the champion belts and the trash talk and the training camp footage, there is a woman who has organized her entire self-image around one relationship, and every stranger typing into her inbox feels like a threat to the whole architecture. And now for the question I actually want to hear you answer in the comments. Is Claressa Shields defending love, or is Claressa Shields defending a lie she needs to be true? Is Claressa Shields the villain of this story, or is Claressa Shields the most human person in it? Because I promise you, whichever side you pick, somebody in that thread is going to disagree with you loudly. Drop your take below, tell me if you think Papoose is being honest with Claressa Shields behind closed doors or if Claressa Shields is holding on to a narrative that's slipping through her fingers, and let me know if you want me to keep pulling this thread, because I've got another breakdown coming very soon about what Remy Ma is quietly building right now while Claressa Shields is busy fighting comment sections. Trust me. That one's going to hit. Either way, this story is nowhere near done. Every time Claressa Shields opens her phone, we get another chapter. Every time Papoose stays silent, the questions get louder. Every time Remy Ma refuses to respond, the whole timeline shifts a little more toward her. And every time a Facebook comment section becomes a war zone, we learn a little more about who Claressa Shields really is when the cameras aren't watching. That's the real fight. Not the one in the ring. The one in the reply box. And right now, Claressa Shields is losing it in real time. Stay locked in. Something bigger is coming.